My objective is to talk about the roles and responsibility of the family. We're going to in the book of Ephesians 5 verse 33. So, but every husband must love his wife as he loves himself, and wives should respect their husbands. So this is we are going deep in terms of the family and the roles and responsibility of the family, but Paul kind of sum up everything in terms of what we're going to dive into tonight. If you're not married and you may feel intimidated by the scripture, please don't, because it's going to help you get a better understanding of the relationships that you have with the opposite sex, whether they're co-workers, your brother, father, auntie, uncle, sister, everybody. It's going to give you a fulsome understanding. If you're a parent, we'll be diving deep in this, but we're anchoring ourselves here tonight. There are some distinct roles that the Bible talks about, what that makes up the family dynamic. We spend some time uncovering the needs of everybody when it comes down to the family. Being able to be sensitive to the needs, identify them. Each person have different needs. There are some fundamental needs. Just recapping a little bit from Matthew 25, from about verse 34 down. Talks about feeding the person, giving them drink of water, shelter, clothes, health care, and visiting the persons in prison. So it's talking about visitation and spending time and so on. So those were some of the basic needs that we looked at. Last month we spent some time together, as well as now. So this month now, we'll be looking into now in terms of how do we divide the roles and responsibilities within the family. Let's look on the core need of a woman. And based on what Paul said, it is to be loved. So there are five things that the Bible talks about in terms of the core need of a woman and what it looks like. One, to be understood. Two, to be honored, and the word honored mean to place value on. So the word that is used for honor means to place value on. To be fed, to be cared for, and to be treated gentle. So it's very interesting that these five things come up when it comes on to understanding the core need of a woman. So this kind of gives you an understanding in terms of the role that the man plays within the home, the father, the husband. What is a core role that this person plays within the family? So let's look at what Peter said. First Peter 3, verse 7. So Peter says, likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the as unto the weaker vessel, and as being hearers together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. So the God's Word translation says that husbands in a similar way live with your wives with understanding, since they are weaker than you are. And weaker meaning is not strength. It's not physical. It is not only about physical strength. And it doesn't necessarily mean that women are weak. But the key here for a man to understand the need, one of the core needs of a woman is to be understood. And this is important because sometimes miscommunication can be a problem. Women, and I'm talking from being on the receiving end, women can, like, for example, communication. One of the things that you can realize that women share everything in terms of not just information, but their emotions. All of this comes across in their communication. But here's the thing. Sometimes what is being shared is not necessarily for the problem to be solved. Sometimes the information is just for information's sake. Sometimes it's just for relating. Sometimes it's just to let you know. And we as men can hear the information and instantly our brain just start to unlock the problem and to see how best we can come up with a solution. But many times what the woman is looking for is for us to just listen. So James said in the book of James, it says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. But Peter was giving a very detailed explanation in terms of the relational aspect now, in terms of what exactly do the role that the man play in the woman's life is that men need to understand women. Sometimes there's this talk that is going around that women are difficult to understand, and a lot of men give up trying to understand what women need. Last month, we spent a great deal of time understanding the core needs that the Bible shares in terms of these things, no matter who you are, these are the needs that you would have. But Peter must have known something that he's encouraging, not only the men, encouraging the husbands and the men in general to live with a woman with understanding. Um, the King James Version says according to knowledge, and one version says with understanding. And there's a case study I want to share. Like, I can bring it up here in Genesis 29. This is a marital problem, but you can see the wider issue that took place. The background is that Jacob worked 14 years for one woman. But when the marriage ceremony came around, when he was to receive his bride, his uncle tricked him. But there's a problem that was mentioned closer to the end of chapter 29 in Genesis that serves as a nice case study where we can look on in terms of identifying the role and the responsibility of Jacob within the family structure. There's one thing that was being fulfilled at the time because Leah had a lot of children for Jacob. She was the one that right out the gate, she started to have a lot of children. So Genesis 29 to 31 says that when the Lord saw Leah was unloved, he made it possible for her to have children, but Rachel had none. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, which means, here is my son, because she said, certainly the Lord has seen my misery now. My husband, see my misery. No, my husband will love me. I will stop there. The word used for love in verse 32 means affection. She had children for Jacob. So sex wasn't a problem in the marriage, but yet still she had a need. She named her children with her first child, here is my son, the Lord has heard me. So she had a problem that she was praying about to God. And clearly, the issue is that he was fulfilling his sexual duty according to Paul, but yet still that wasn't enough at the time. So if that is being fulfilled, but yet still she still is asking God for her husband to love her, what exactly is she looking for from her husband? And it is not until you go further up to understand the type of relationship that Jacob had with Rachel, you begin to see the distinction between the two. How one was treated and how one was not treated. The things that he did with Rachel was the same thing that she was looking for. This stuff, what we have here in front of us in terms of to be understood, to be honored, and just to repeat for those who came in after we started, the word honor in the biblical context mean to place value on. When we talk about you honoring somebody, you're saying that you value the role that this person plays and who this person is. You value what they do. So that's what that word means. So what we're talking about in terms of is being understood. So Peter was explaining that the men need to understand that the women need to be understood. So what exactly do they need to understand? One, how they communicate. Women communicate differently from men. And for the ladies here who came in after, I'm talking from the perspective of being on the receiving end. So from my experience and all my life, I'm 39 now, and from I was 17 till now, I've been working around a lot of women. And one of the keys that I've observed over the years, and even with my in my own family, is being understood is one of the main things that must be paid attention to, especially by the men. And one way that that can happen is in terms of how women communicate different from how men communicate. There are two types of communication styles that normally you would see: direct, indirect. Direct meaning, can you do this for me? Indirect, I think that the garbage need to come out of the kitchen dirty. And you talk about how the kitchen dirty and you don't have no help, and everybody just nasty, and that is indirect communication. Both are saying the same thing, but when that is shared, men would interpret one different from the other. Because if you don't say take out can you help me take out the garbage and clean up the kitchen, it would be interpreted different when you're talking about how dirty the kitchen is. And the intent behind both is the same, but one is not said, but one is actually stated very clearly. And this is one of the things where, over time, the this would help in terms of being understood. In this in terms of the communication aspect would help the family grow, because now your intentions are known, your preferences are known, the different dynamics in terms of how you'd like the room to stay. You might have certain routines that are different. Some persons may spread the bed immediately as they wake up before they do anything else. They like a clean room, but others they would do that the last thing before they leave. And sometimes these basic things can cause argument. It may not necessarily put, end up in a big blown fight, but it can cause contention because these are difference in habits. Um, so in terms of being understood is really being intentional about the communication. Sometimes the frustration of not having your expectations met, and the only person that knows your expectation is you, that can cause also a problem, and that hinders understanding when it comes on to the communication aspect. Not saying that women are the only one that does this. Men indirectly communicate as well. Not every person knows how to clearly explain the needs that they have and how they can work together, because it's a collaborative effort when it comes on to the family. Soon get to the children, leaving them for last. We're talking about breaking down in terms of what does love look like when it comes on to from the woman's perspective, and the role and the responsibility that each person should play. We're zeroing on the women first. So first one is understanding, and it has to do with the communication aspect, being intentional, being clear about not only the expectation, but how exactly we can collaborate together. Give you another example. For instance, one person is sick, can pick anybody, and so the husband is sick and him feeling lots of pain. But the only thing that you can see is the discomfort on his face and how him walk. But he's not saying that he's in discomfort, right? However, the wife might come to the husband and say, honey, how are you? Are you okay? You look like you're in discomfort. And she start to ask a string of questions. And if the man is not able to answer the question, it may seem like the woman is bothering him when he's in discomfort and want to be left alone. However, the questions that come is the woman is in her mind is trying to pinpoint where the problem is to see how well she can solve it. Because she's trying to, because her nature in terms of care is like something happened to our precious baby and she want the baby. All right. and it hurt her to see her baby in distress. So she asks questions. You want some tea? You're hungry? You need some pill? Do you want me to take you to the doctor? And these are the questions that may come. And her intent is to ensure that you're okay. But sometimes, as men, we might look at it and say, boy, I just want to be left alone. Might be in a little discomfort. It's not that serious. But to her, you're in discomfort, it pain her heart. So these are the types of things in terms of we're talking about living with the woman with understanding in terms of understanding the communication style, the intent. Sometimes it's difficult to explain, but it's easier to pay attention and learn these things, the patterns that happen over time, which makes the whole living together way easier. Um, Paul talks about being fed. That much to talk about in terms of the preference. These now going down in terms of preferences. What is exactly that the woman prefers to eat? Maybe she's on a diet. Maybe there are certain things that she's allergic to. These are the things that we learn over time that makes the integration part easier. Um, then to be cared for. Now this is last two is um where everything now comes into play in terms of how the understanding part links to the last two, to be cared for, in terms of what does it look like when a woman wants to be taken care of. And it's not necessarily like how the society paints it in terms of to be the lavish lifestyle, but the intent to be looked after in terms of dealing with the emotions, ensuring that she's heard, give her the space to express herself. Sometimes it should be cared for in terms of the whole physical well-being is not just ensuring that her belly full, but in terms of other little things that may be needed. And ladies, you can jump in terms of additional stuff that I may be overlooking. Um, and the whole idea of the man looking after her best interests and protecting her, and it took more on going on the role of the man protecting the woman and ensuring that there is her even the things that are may not be spoken of all the time are met. And that's where the understanding comes into play, knowing what her goals are, understanding the nature of her job, and even ensuring that she does well, providing the resources that she needs in terms of to do what she needs to meet that expectation and goals. To be cared for also means in terms of some little things that may be needed around the house. You listening and hearing she talking about these things, and you get it and ensure that she can have access to these things. So these are some little things in terms of the being cared for. And last bit in terms of being treated gentle, this is now where not only patience come into play, but in terms of patience would be the key part here. But in terms of slowing down, um, in terms of how you talk, the tone that you use, in terms of how you handle her with care, in terms of this is now in terms of the physical contact and touch, how sometimes men underestimate their strength, and talking from experience in terms of how my wife would explain this to me. Sometimes I might be holding her hand, and a gentle squeeze for me is pain for her. And that's the difference in terms of strength. My wife will be holding my hand and trying to squeeze it as hard as she can, and nothing happens. But I just gently squeeze her hand and she's in agony. And that's the difference in terms of strength. And we're talking about being cared for. Sometimes your physical strength is an asset, but in some cases, we have to dial it back so that we can ensure, as men, that the women are treated a little bit more gentle in terms of how we talk. Sometimes the tone in which we talk, the level of authority in our voice, and the tone that we may be using to respond can crush a woman just by how you talk. You may not mean anything by it. You may just be answering genuinely and truthfully, but the tone itself alone damage the woman. And your intent is not to wound the woman, but you're answering a question. But the way in which you speak can cause a problem. Sometimes you may be, let's just use another example. And one thing is let's use getting ready to go out for an example. Your intent is to leave by 7 o'clock, and when you look, 7 o'clock is approaching. You are ready, but the woman is doing several different things leading up to leaving, including getting ready, packing her bag. If you have children, trying to marshal the children out. If you have a if you have a daughter, combing here it's going to take a bit of time. That has to be done before she gets ready. Maybe looking after food, sharing. So all list of items leading up to leaving. You need to leave because you're trying to get to a certain place on time. So the intent is to leave to reach on time. But here is what can happen sometimes. The impatience come into play. Why not hurry up? And then you might be under pressure to leave early. And then you may say something in that moment. By the time you're leaving, what would be a happy moment leading out the door becomes you saying something that um humiliates or I don't want to use the word belittle, but the way in which it is said, it hurts the woman leaving the house. And the way in which you said it was not in a gentle way. She may understand that she's late, but because of what is happening, the attention is shifted. So when we sum up all of this in terms of understanding the needs of the what loves look like for a woman, the Bible explains it clearly. To be understood, to be honored, which means just reiterating the point, to be placed value on, to be fed, to be taken care of, and to be treated with gently. Let's look on the whole honoring part for a bit before I move on to the next section. The whole idea of the being honored is recognizing value. How many of us, when we look on what others contribute to our lives, how much do we know the value of of that contribution, for example, and being able to recognize the worth of the contribution that the other person may be. And we're looking at the woman now. How much of us do what like severance and how much do you understand the value that the person brings? And not only recognizing the value, but seeing it as something precious. So that's where this concept or this mindset comes into play in what it means, where all of the things that is done around the home and for the family, there's a value attached to it. If you want to put a cost, um, then you'll be able to understand the value of this thing. Let's use food for example. If you buy food on at work, you don't carry lunch, but you buy food. If you Last time I check up, fried chicken, rice and peas with vegetable, medium, they call them the coffin form box. That would cost say $800 in Kingston. Between eight to say $1,000. That's how one meal. And if you do if you have to leave home early and purchase breakfast would be round about the same price. So right away you're purchasing two meals for the day. $1,600 come out of your pocket by 12 o'clock for food. Say for example now, before you leave your home, that breakfast is prepared by your wife or by the woman in the house. So right away, you add $800 to your pocket. But what if out of that breakfast, you get a dish with food to carry? So that woman saves you, you're looking at it from the perspective, so that contribution of cooking a meal and you getting breakfast and lunch saves you $1,600 per day. So that's the value of the woman's cooking skills, of a meal, right? So that's the worth of just the meal itself. If you add dinner, you can say $2,400 in for 3 meals per day is being saved by cooking at home and carrying food and then going home to eat and so on. Not saying that it can't buy food on the road, but just looking on the value of that act itself. And every day she ensures that you leave home with a meal and you carry lunch at work and whatever. So that act of meeting that need, which we talked about last week, has a value, it has a price. And that price to you is to save you from spending upwards of $3,000 per day to buy food. And all of that depends on what you feel to eat for the day, because some meals may cost more, some may cost less. And we're just looking at it from a blanket statement now. And even to look on the whole idea of cleaning the house and ironing and these basic things that sometimes we may overlook, like it's just normal things that we just do as people, as adults at home, they do carry a price. So if you have to pay somebody to do that, you're looking at, say, per month you might look on upwards of 50 to $100,000 just to have someone do these basic things at home. And the reason why I'm sharing this is to really look on the value of these contribution, because it does have a price. It does solves a problem, and it does holds weight when it comes on to the contribution it makes to the family. Because one person takes care of all of this, but when you look on what what it adds to your life, you now begin to understand the worth and the weight and the value that this person brings to your life. And you can begin now to understand the wider contribution that this person may bring. And we're not looking at it in terms of splitting down the roles between, says, this is what the woman does, this is what the man does. I'm just looking on, when you see these things, we have to understand and recognize the value that the person brings, and then pay attention to it and to see and recognize what does the love looks like from the woman's perspective. And that's our show. Thanks for listening. I release a new episode of this podcast every Tuesday wherever you listen to your podcast. If you find this information useful, please share this episode with a friend.